Hello, I am Wayne Johnson with Doc and Queen Ministries. Today, I'd like to discuss the community tab that I put out on yesterday, and it read, Loving God first allows husbands to always know his wife's worth as well as his value. I want to read to you before we even get in depth in that, but I want you to understand how important your spouse is, your wife is, since I'm coming from the husband standpoint. And let me read this to you. Your spouse is the only person you have vowed to love, honor, cherish, and care for until death do you part. You made this commitment to God, to your spouse, in front of at least one witness. You don't make that commitment to your siblings, parents, or children. That should be a hint that this marriage thing is a big deal. Now, with that being said, let us go and understand why God needs to be first. And with God being first, it will prove how worthy your wife is to you and the value you will receive from it. We, the believing husbands of Jesus, are selected first to love God and then love one another, i.e., our wife, as much as we love ourselves. Matthew chapter 22, verse 37 through 40 reads, And he said to him, You should love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You should love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depends all the law and the prophets. Loving and revering to God always supposed to come first. But many of us husbands forget God, or at least do not put him first as our marriage takes place, making our wives or other idols first, but not putting our agenda or our wives' agenda above God will keep us husbands in a line to knowing God's superiority as well as her worth to us and our value to ourselves. It's knowing spiritual order. So our agenda or our wives' agenda cannot be put above God. Because if we do that, it will take us out of alignment of knowing God's superiority. As believers, we learn early that God is a jealous God and no relationship comes before him. But oftentimes, when husband and wives disagree, get separations, even divorce, we stop communicating with God. We sadden God when we place our wives over him, where he created both of us. Creation should never be before the Creator. A perfect God should never be less than a human being, even if it's our wife. Your wife has not died for you, but Jesus has. So with that, Jesus calls for an allegiance to him that's greater than your wife. God's relationship is created on covenant, and it would be a mistake to put your wife earthly relationship above God's eternal relationship. Remember, the most important thing is where you will spend eternity. As a husband, learning your wife's place in your life is following God's roadmap for marriage. Putting God first helps and guides husbands how to commit to their wife. Since God never gave up on us, we are commanded to never give up on each other. husband and wives. We are called to endure through all circumstances. Husbands, you are chosen and cherished by God. You know this by how God gave Eve to Adam, and that should show you your status God has in you. Remember, husbands, God loved you first, not your wife. But this shows your wife worth because God saw Adam needed Eve just like you need your wife. God gave you your wife, and that what makes her worthy. Out of all the many outcomes out there, the Lord allowed you to pick her. So this gives you your value. Right mindset puts your priorities in order. So God first, you second, and your wife third. Husbands must remember not to lose the order, so not to ruin the marriage. Husbands, to accurately love your wife, you must have God first. He's your first love. In closing, putting your wife before God puts her in a place you nor her can achieve. As great as your wife may be, she cannot replace who God is in your life. If you place the burden of your wife as the greatest authority over your life, you will be disappointed. But by knowing her spot after God will allow you to feel her worth, and that will give you your value. That's the word that God shared with me as I pondered this last night. God is good, but God is always first, and He will allow us, by loving Him first, recognizing our wife's value and worth, which entails, gives us our worth and value. Take care and God bless.